Often when we imagine someone asking why, we might think of something like this.
Why?
When kids say why like that, it can be kind of annoying. But the reality is that the question why is at the basis of so much of our society. I mean, think about it. It is what academics do all the time. If you are a doctor and you're seeing a patient, you're always asking the question, why? Why is the patient presenting X, Y, or Z as a condition? Scientists' whole job is to answer the question, why? Archaeologists as well. Investigators and FBI and police are always asking the question, why? And at a really deep level, so are theologians and ministers. So this instinct that we have as even a little child to ask the question why is deeply embedded in us. And so today, I'm going to talk to you about the when and the how to use why when we are trying to persuade someone or influence them, when we're trying to negotiate with them, or when we're in conflict with them. I'm Bob Bordone. I'm a senior fellow at Harvard Law School. I'm also the founder and principal of the Cambridge Negotiation Institute. And for more than 20 years, I have been teaching law students to answer the question, why? So in the comments below, share with me the parts of your job or your life where you feel like you're called to ask the question, why? Also, please be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, like this video, and ring the bell so you never miss new content from me. Okay, so let me share with you 3 different times when it's really important to ask the question why, and then I'm going to share with you 3 pieces of advice on how you should ask the question why. Now, the first of these times might feel really counterintuitive, but why is an incredibly good question to ask when you most disagree with what you are hearing the other person in a conflict or a negotiation say. Now, this is counterintuitive because if you're like many people I work with, at that moment of disagreement, you want to disagree back, or you want to tell them why they're wrong, or you want to give them another argument.
Well, you're wrong, okay? You're wrong.
But I want to coach you to not do that, because that is the moment when the why is like the million-dollar question. Because that why helps us understand the basis for the thing we disagree about, or the evidence for why they have a different view. So imagine you are a Kamala Harris fan, and a friend of yours has just said Donald Trump is the best. This is the moment when you might want to say, no, he's the worst, or no, he put the country in the gutter, or X, Y, or Z. I want to coach you to ask that question why, to get curious. The second time you want to ask the question why is when someone in a negotiation gives you some kind of an extreme offer or demand. So for example, if they have offered you $20 an hour and you think that you're worth at least $200 an hour, that's the moment when you want to say something like, that's ridiculous, or walk away.
You must be kidding. Wow.
But I want to encourage you again to ask a question of why. Because their offer is based on something. And if it's not based on something, you want to know that as well. The only way you'll know that is by some version of the question why. Okay, so the last time, the last circumstance is when you want to ask the question why, is when you're unsure of what they are asking for or what they are saying. Now, on the one hand, this seems obvious. But on the other hand, I want to go a bit further here, because a mistake I've seen people make is that they feel like they know the reason why someone is saying something. I want to coach you to actually take a step back and assume that it's less clear, and then ask that question why. So you might be thinking, this almost sounds, Bob, like we should almost always be asking the question why in a negotiation. And I actually would say yes to that, right? That why is a question that almost always helps us. But here's also what's important. How you ask the question why really matters. And so I'm going to offer you 3 different pieces of advice on how to think about how to ask the question why.
Let's hear it.
First piece of advice, and it's really important, is there's actually more than one way of asking the question why. Meaning that if all you keep on saying is why, that will become annoying. You instead can say something like, please explain, or can you say more about, or please elaborate, or help me understand, or inform me about. All of these entrees are different ways to say why without saying the word why. So one of the ways to get better at this is to practice, and I think practice is easier if you actually do some work yourself to cultivate curiosity. So what I have found is that people are less good at asking why questions if internally they're not that curious or they already think they know the answer. So the more you can actually be curious, the more your phrasing will actually sound curious instead of kind of sparky or fighting. So my second piece of advice in terms of how to do this is to avoid asking why in a way that answers the question for them. So what do I mean by that? Well, I have many times heard someone say, why do you want some ice cream? Is it because you're hungry or you want something sweet? Well, the question of why do you want some ice cream is very nice, it's very open-ended, but now we've boxed them into 2 choices. It might not be either of those choices. Maybe it's because their uncle owns the ice cream store and they want to drive business to him. So giving that either or tends not to work that well.
Remember that.
What are some other examples of this kind of answering the question for them? Taking a guess. Why do you want $500 million? Is it because you want to retire and buy an island? Or why do you want $500 million? What could you possibly do with that much money? Each of these is actually taking away their full autonomy to answer the question, but importantly in a negotiation, it's taking away from you the possibility of understanding the real reason. You also want to avoid filling in the blank for them. So let me say a little bit more about why it's actually hard to ask the why question and not add in the either or the taking a guess. Most people are so unaccustomed to having someone give them a broad, open field, like say more or help me understand. And so if you ask a question like that, often you get a pause. And for many of us, the pause feels awkward. So we quickly follow it up with an either or a yes or no. What I want to suggest here is leaning into the pause. The pause might be 5 seconds. It'll feel like 20 seconds to you, but it's like 5 seconds. Sit with that pause. I have found myself so many times being grateful that I just thought, okay, I'm feeling awkward, stay silent, and then they say a whole bunch of stuff that I never would have thought of. Last really important piece of advice on the how here relates to monitoring your tone. So this is a video about asking the question why, and why really matters. But there are certain kinds of whys you want to avoid. I began by talking about a 4-year-old's why. But why do I have to put on a jacket, Daddy? But why do I have to go to bed? But why is it, right? That kind of a why, which I might call a whiny why, you want to avoid.
Why?
There's another kind of why that can get you in trouble. It's what I call the litigator's why. It's actually kind of a hot question, meaning it's not a genuine question, it's more of an argument that ends in a question mark, and you want to avoid that. The thing you really want to do, and this is something I try to do in those moments when I do want to go into the litigator why, is embrace my own inner therapist. So what does that mean, right? I literally imagine if I were the therapist for this person, how would I do this? And suddenly my tone becomes curious, empathic, genuine. And so for you, it might not be embracing your inner therapist, but whatever it is, to coach yourself to that place of curiosity without condescension. So to summarize, the 3 hows of how to ask why. First, cultivate multiple ways of asking why. Second, avoid giving them the answer by filling in the blank for them. And third, monitor your tone. Build your own inner therapist as a tone. So, stay tuned to watch this next video, The Art of Persuasion and Relationship Building. I'll see you there. Okay, it's not difficult to keep watching. Click, click.